Hello my dear friends, I hope you're doing well wherever you are. In the previous unit, we learned about source panel. Since now we're gonna go to timeline and we'll cover it completely. So please stay with us.
1, 2, 3.
Alright, as I mentioned before, the timeline here exists in the lower right corner of the program interface, with a stack of different layers called tracks. In this section we have video tracks and here we have our audio tracks. All have been gathered here with one dedicated name known as a sequence. Actually, a sequence refers to a timeline where you arrange and edit your video and audio clips to create a content, where you can assemble and organize your media files to tell a story about the topic. You might make several sequences to create a complete and coherent project video or produce any audiovisual content. As it is obvious, here we have the sequence name. Timeline is the area where you arrange your video clips and apply all kinds of edits you would like to do, along a horizontal axis in any order that you need. Here you can do all of your editing tasks, including cutting, trimming, and arranging clips like video clips, audio clips, effects, and etc. Totally, you can do any kind of editing on them and finally play your project at any point that you need. This is where you spend most of your time while working with Premiere Pro. The timeline consists of multiple layers called tracks. Here we have video tracks and audio tracks. Video tracks are used for visual elements such as video clips and graphics, while audio tracks are used for audio elements such as music, dialogue, and sound effects. A clip is a short segment of the media file placed on the timeline. Clip head refers to the start of a single clip on the timeline called in point, and clip tail refers to the end of a single clip on the timeline called out point. You can set in and out points of each clip that you want to include in your final project. Indeed, key aspects of a sequence that we might do here in Adobe Premiere Pro are as follows. Premiere Pro provides a variety of editing tools that you can use within the sequence. You can apply transitions and effects to your clips within the sequence to enhance the visual and auditory aspects of your project. You can use markers and labels within the sequence to add comments, notes, or notations to specific points in your timeline. This is helpful for collaboration and organization. Premiere Pro allows you to create nested sequences, which are sequences within sequences. This feature is useful for organizing complex projects and maintaining a clear structure. When you create a new sequence, you can customize its settings, including frame rate, resolution, and aspect ratio. These settings should match the specifications of your intended final output. You can play back your sequence within the timeline to preview how your project will look and sound. This helps you make adjustments and refine your edit before exporting the final video. As I told you before, here we have the sequence name and you also have the sequence here in Project Panel. With this little icon, you can see it right here. Notice the difference between this icon and the icon of your videos. This sequence will be created when you bring something into your timeline for the first time. So in general, you can drag your media from your source panel to the timeline to create a sequence with a name that comes from its source. Also, you can bring your media from your project panel. Again, let me close my sequence. Now I drag my media here to make a sequence. And with the same name. And for both methods, the relevant sequence will be created in the project panel right away. Anyway, you can rename it. So let me do it for you now. Alright. And you can also organize it into bins. Something like that. And another way to make a sequence is for when you want to create your own sequence from scratch with certain characteristics like frame rate, resolution, and things like that. You can do this via File menu. Even though you can set these characteristics later on via sequence settings inside the sequence menu, and we will talk more about it further. Now let's start from scratch and create a sequence. So I have opened some media here and now make a sequence like this. You choose a name for it and organize it and categorize it into a bin. While the timeline panel is selected, and you can select it by clicking everywhere on this timeline, if you hit the spacebar in your keyboard, it plays and you can see it up inside Program panel. Actually, you can play and stop it via play to stop toggle button too. Anyway, you can delete clips from your timeline too by pressing delete key when they have been selected. So I do it and finish. They're gone. Alright, let me enter another clip to the timeline and notice that we will not have a new sequence because the sequence already exists. And I wanna add another clip here at the end of this one, and well, when I get it closer, it snaps to the previous clip and it can stick to it. So there is no gap between them. Now let me add some other clips into the timeline. As you can see, I can see part of my clips in timeline, so if I press minus key on my keyboard, it will be zoomed out the timeline, so you can see it again. Also, by pressing plus key on your keyboard, it goes to be zoomed in. In addition, with this handle right here, you can do zoom in and out. Also, if you drag this handle a little bit down, it will be taller, and if you drag it a little bit up, it will be shorter. Even you can do this by pressing Ctrl or Command key plus plus, and by pressing Alt plus plus, it happens for the audio. And remember that with up and down arrows, you can go to the in and out point of any clip, as you can see it here. Now let's talk about these little icons you have here. This one called toggle track button, and you can make it visible or invisible. So you are going to see or not to see it in the program panel depends on the track you're in, and while it is invisible, you will not have that track in your output. We have the same for the audio track. To mute the audio of a track in the timeline, click the mute track button in that audio track line. Sometimes you might have multiple audio tracks in your timeline, so via this solo track icon, you're able to play this audio from only this track in your timeline, so that other tracks will not play anymore. Also here we have toggle track icon. So when I enable it, this track will be unaffected by what happens, so you can't make change on it by accident. As an example, if I insert something here, as you can see, I can't change it anymore and it goes to other tracks. Another tool that I want to talk about is the toggle sync lock icon right here, and while it is enabled, all the tracks will move together when you make edits. For example, here I insert the clip inside this track with active sync lock. As you can see, other tracks move to sync themselves. To turn off sync lock, you simply need to click on the sync lock icon again. Now, if I do it again, other tracks don't move and stay in their place. So no synchronization happens here. As another sample, let me repel delete it. Here I want to delete this part and get rid of this gap. I will do it by repel deleting. Let's do it while sync lock is turned on, so I right click here and choose repel delete. Notice that other tracks are affected. Now I do it once again with disabling sync locker and do some movement editing. Since now with repel deleting, nothing will synchronize and other tracks stay on their place unmoved. Note that unlike track lock, when sync lock is disabled, you can also do editing on it. Here we have some other tools that look similar. You can see them, V1, and again here we have V1, V2, V3 and more. And also here we have A1, again A1, A2, A3, and it goes ahead. But what do these icons actually do? Let's check it out. At first, let me open this project again and notice that in this column we have track targeting right here. Also here we have source patching, but you see nothing here, and what is the reason? Because you don't have any clips in the source monitor right now. So if you open a clip in source panel, then you can see it appears. Track targeting in Adobe Premiere Pro is a feature that allows you to specify which track or tracks are affected by certain actions like inserting, pasting, deleting clips, and totally, it specifies where the specific edit is applied exactly, even when you're working with complex projects with multiple layers. But how to use track targeting in Adobe Premiere Pro? Let's see some examples. Here in this project, track targeting is in this column, so let me turn them on all tracks here. It means all are affected by actions. Now, as I mentioned before, I use up and down keys on my keyboard, so it goes through all the steps that I have here in all of these tracks. Now if I turn this one off, regardless of these points here, it moves into the next point right here. Another key feature of track targeting is when you're doing copy and cut. Here, if I copy or cut this clip and paste it via the edit menu, it will be pasted into V1 and A1 right inside the lowest track that has track targeting enabled. So if I turn this off and paste it again, you can see them here in this track. But what about source patching? Many people are confused about differences between these two, maybe because they look the same. Indeed, I wish it had another shape or color. Anyway, to explain source patching, it is a method to specify exactly where you want your asset, like image, video or audio, to appear in timeline when placing the asset. So here, I open my clip in source panel, then specify in an out point, and specify where I want to put the asset via the playhead. Now I click on insert, and it will shift these clips to the right and stands here in this track. Even if I hit overwrite, it will overwrite it onto the same track because this track has been selected as source patching. Now if you change the active source patching here in this track and insert or overwrite again, your clip goes to the specified track that has been specified as the active track. Remember that if you have no clip selected in the source panel or here in the project panel, then you will not see V1 and A1 on your source patching. Anyway, if you deselect A1 here and drag your clip into the timeline, only video portion of the clip is taken to the timeline. And while only A1 is selected, audio portion of your clip will be taken to the timeline. Alright, and the last thing that I want to talk about is something that I call it here gap. But what is a gap? Actually, if you hold Alt key and hit source patching, a gap is activated. Also, you can right click here and select gap. You can see it here, a black border appears around that source patching. Now let me add an in point and out point over here. Then I insert or overwrite it, the same amount of frame that I have here. Alright guys, I hope you have learned something valuable from this. In the next video we will talk more about timeline in detail, and until the next video I wish the best for you.